Hi guys, and welcome to this video. I hope you're all doing super well. Thank you so much once again for joining me right here on my channel. So today guys, we are going to be talking about the case of Lina Medina, and this is quite a sad case where a very young girl became pregnant. And I just want to put a disclaimer out before going into any details in this video, because it is quite a sad, disturbing case. So if you are very sensitive, just be mindful of that before you watch this video. Lina Marcela Medina de Gerardo, we'll refer to her as just Lina in this video, was born on the 23rd of September 1933. So this case took place quite a long time ago, and she was born in the province of Castrovena, which is in Peru. Her father Tiburello was a silversmith at that time, and her mother, I don't think she was working, she was called Victoria, and they actually had 9 children together. And I believe they weren't living in, you know, a comfortable situation. I think they were quite impoverished. So how this case actually started out, guys, is because Lina's stomach started to grow, and at this age she was maybe like 4.5, or it was just before her 5th birthday, so she was probably 4 and 6 months or 4 and 9 months, something like that. And her stomach just started to get really big, and bearing in mind this is a very small girl, she's just over 4 years old, so it was something very unusual. But bearing in mind this was 1933, when clinical technology was obviously very limited at that time. It's not like now, so they just believed that, you know, that it wasn't a pregnancy. They just thought her stomach's growing, and they weren't sure why. I apologise for any background noise, guys, because I had to open the window because it's too hot, and I've got the guinea pigs who are running everywhere, so I apologise in advance. So yeah, basically Lina's stomach just started to grow and grow, and obviously it got bigger and bigger because she was actually pregnant. Now, when she hit around 7 months of pregnancy, and obviously her parents didn't know she was 7 months pregnant, they ended up taking her to a hospital, and that is where doctors discovered that Lina was actually 7 months pregnant. So 6 weeks after the doctors gave the diagnosis and realised that obviously Lina was very heavily pregnant at the age of 5 years old, they decided to schedule a C-section, because obviously she couldn't give birth naturally at that age. So they scheduled a C-section for her, and she gave birth to a little boy who was named Gerardo. So Lina's case, when she had the C-section, that day was overseen by Dr. Lazada. So I believe this was the doctor who'd initially discovered that Lina was pregnant. So he was overseeing the whole C-section, and there were 2 other doctors assisting him. So one was an anaesthetist, and one was another general doctor, basically. So there was 3 doctors assisting in delivering this baby. Now obviously the main priority at that moment was just to deliver the baby and ensure that Lina was okay. But after she delivered the baby, and she was 5 years old and 7 months when she delivered the baby, all these questions then started to arise of how is this little girl pregnant, of course, at 5 years old. There were really 2 questions on the table. How did she become pregnant, you know, biologically at the age of 5? And the other question was like, who has impregnated Lina? Doctors determined that it couldn't have been anything other than a rape, because she was just under 5 years old when this happened and when she fell pregnant. And initially they thought there was a situation of incest that had happened with Lina's father, but then there was no evidence in regards to this at all, and so that case was dropped. The doctors then went on to sort of research how biologically has Lina got pregnant at the age of just under 5 years old, basically at 4 years old. Now again, as I said, guys, back then, this is at the time when Lina's given birth, it's now 1939. So again, still clinical technology is, you know, very limited. And there weren't ultrasounds and all these kind of things. So it was a lot more of a complex situation, especially in this case, to determine exactly what had gone on. So what initially they discovered was they thought that Lina had actually, you know, had an early puberty situation, and her periods had started at the age of 3 years old, which already is, you know, something in itself. Of course, that's quite you know, astounding and shocking. However, when they started to do further research, they actually realized that her period had started, guys, at the age of just 8 months old. Yes, you heard that right, 8 months old. So what happened after Lina gave birth is her parents, because obviously she was so young, her parents decided to conceal Lina's real identity to Lina's son Gerardo, and they told Gerardo that Lina was actually his sister as opposed to his mother. And this was the case until Gerardo got to about 10 years old and Lina was around 15-16 years old. And at that time they revealed to Gerardo that actually Lina was his mother. There is only, guys, a very limited number of images in regards to this case, because obviously this was you know, so many years ago, and we didn't have the same, as I said already, we didn't have the same technology as now. But Dr. Lozada did do some, I think, some kind of videos, and some apparently got lost somehow and ended up in a river, but there was still some, you know, a few of the videos kept of Lina when she was in the pregnancy. And there's a few actual like photos of Lina when she's pregnant and after she's given birth. And because obviously this was such an astounding thing, there were a lot of journalists at that time that wanted to cover this case and wanted to interview the family, and they offered the family, there was a journalist who offered the family an amount of $5,000, and again this is back in 1939, so in comparison with now, that was, you know, a lot of money. And as I said, the family were quite impoverished, they had 9 children, but they always throughout the years rejected to do any interviews. They just wanted to live, you know, as any other standard family and protect Lina and her son. So they actually never ever did any interviews and refused to talk to anyone about this case. And I have to say, I really respect what Lina's family did, especially at that time, because imagine you've got 9 children that you need to feed, you're in poverty already, you've got something very different that's happened to one of your children that's very traumatic, you've got someone then handing you a lot of money potentially which could help to care and feed your children, but you rejected it because you want to now protect your daughter and her child, and you don't want anyone sort of hounding them like sharks and, you know, saying disgusting things about them. So anyway, what ended up happening is somehow Lina's little brother, he ended up living at the hospital where Dr. Lozada worked, and he was under Dr. Lozada's care. So Dr. Lozada took care of Lina's son, and Lina went through education. The doctor helped her to go through her education, and then when Lina finished school, the doctor employed Lina in the hospital as a secretary. So he really helped her, you know, education wise, professionally, financially, so that she could have, you know, some kind of half decent life and, you know, try to be in a good situation financially. And that money that Lina earned actually paid for her son's education. So even though she was so young when this happened, as she grew up, she's then financed her son's education and put him through school. And honestly, like, it's just commendable what this woman has gone through. Now, later on in life, Lina actually did have, you know, actually a half decent life, especially following on from something so traumatic. And she met her future husband when she was around 34 in the early 70s. They got married, they had a good marriage, and she went on actually to have another child in her early 30s. Sadly, Lina's first son, so Gerardo, the little boy that was born, the first child, he died at around the age of 40, and he had some kind of medical condition, so that's how he ended up passing away. Now, in regards to the identity of the father of Lina's child and who that is, and I don't even want to say father, I'd want to say this perpetrator of abusing a child. Actually, I don't even want to use the term father of her child, because that person doesn't deserve that. Okay, so this perpetrator, they tried to find out from Lina if she could give a description of this man, right? But obviously she was so small at the time, and the police interviewed her and the doctors asked her questions as well, but she couldn't give really any precision on his description, because she was so tiny at the time. Like, so it wasn't a precise description that she was able to give, unfortunately. And years later, she was asked a lot of questions, and it was never determined who the father was, and she would never elaborate any further as she became an adult, and even into her 50s, 60s, 70s, she's never wanted to elaborate on who this person is. Now, some people have said that they think this case is a hoax, that it's all made up, even though there are actually images to prove this, okay? And to be honest, I don't know why, first off, why someone would make up something that's so traumatic like this. And over the years, into Lina's old age, she's always maintained exactly the same story, so have her family. So to accuse someone of lying about something that they've experienced that's so traumatic, first of all, is disgusting. Those people should be highly ashamed of themselves. And it's not because Lina couldn't identify her perpetrator, bearing in mind she was 4 years old at the time. So it's not because she couldn't identify him or hasn't named him that this situation didn't occur, because clearly it did, and she was pregnant, unfortunately, at the age of 5 years old. Anyway, as I said, they weren't able to identify this perpetrator to Lina's abuse. And so, yeah, this person was never sought after. And over the years, more and more journalists, as Lina got older and we entered the 90s, the 2000s, a lot of journalists tried to get interviews from her, but she still maintained that she refused to do any interviews, and she just wanted to get on with her life. And that is the case of Lina Medina, guys. Now, honestly, I would say, in my opinion, what that woman has experienced, it takes some strength to get back up, put your son through education, get a job, and come to a realization that you have to take that much responsibility after going through something so traumatic. Like, going through something like that anyway at any age is traumatic. Imagine going through something like that at 4 years old. Then you've got to assume your role as a mother, put your child through education, get a job. Like, it's what this woman's done is unbelievable. Like, where she's got back up and found so much strength to get through this is actually astonishing. And in my opinion, it shows that that perpetrator who did this to Lina actually hasn't won, because Lina has had so much strength, and she continued with her life, and she made a good life for herself. And then imagine Lina's parents, guys, when they discovered this. And at that time, I think they thought that Lina actually had some kind of tumour, because tumours can actually literally grow anywhere in the body and on the body. So they thought, oh, this is just a tumour in her stomach, and it's got so big now, let's take her to the doctor. And they probably thought, right, the doctors are going to be able to extract it, and then her stomach's going to be the same, and we're going to go back to, our life. But instead they got there and realised their 5-year-old child is pregnant and has been abused. Imagine. And then you've got the authorities and police that are accusing Lina's father, when the father and the mother had no idea what had happened to their child, and they're so devastated at that point. And now the father has to then experience being accused of something which he hasn't done, and all he's probably thinking is, like, he's probably devastated because this happened to his little girl and he just wants to protect her. Like, honestly, this is so sad. And literally the family continued to live, and it said that they actually got no help from authorities, because remember I mentioned that they were in quite a difficult situation financially. They were quite impoverished. They got no help from any resource, and the only offer of help from resources was journalists who wanted to do interviews and were willing to pay money. And they didn't want to do that, as I said, because they wanted to protect Lina, and they thought it wasn't the right thing to do, which I agree with, to speak out about their daughter and go into detail, and they didn't want to do that. Anyway, guys, I will leave this video where it is. Please feel free to leave any comments down below, and I will see you guys very, very soon, of course, for another video.